All right, let's get right into this story. It all starts in a New York City high-rise where one tenant, well, his habit of keeping track of everything is about to kick off this massive fight with his corporate landlord. So, this is Kevin. And this quote, "I document everything," with a little smiley face, that pretty much sums him up. And you know, that habit, it's not just some personality quirk. It's the key to this whole story. Because you have to wonder, right? What actually happens when one guy's detailed records go up against a corporate giant?
And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. This is a deep dive into one man's fight with his landlord. But it's really about something bigger. We're talking about consumer rights, corporate power, and really the power of proof. Just how much is it worth when push comes to shove?
Okay, so where does a conflict like this even begin? Well, it started with something pretty ordinary, something tons of renters go through, a lease renewal. Kevin's landlord, a big company called Brookfield Properties, sent him an offer for his apartment at the Eugene, this fancy high-rise in Manhattan. And you can see the numbers here. They wanted to bump his rent from about $92.50 a month up to almost $9,500. But honestly, for Kevin, the rent wasn't even the main problem, not even close. Before he was going to sign anything, he had to figure out what was going on with another, much crazier cost, his power bill. And this is where the mystery really starts. Kevin saw his power bills were just out of control, super high, totally random. So he starts talking to his neighbors, and guess what? He finds out he is definitely not the only one.
Get this, 1 month, his bill hits almost $800. That's like 3 times what it should have been for that time of year. So, true to form, he goes into full detective mode. He starts collecting data from his own place, from his neighbors, and they've all got similar crazy stories to tell.
And here's maybe the most wild piece of evidence. One of his neighbors was gone for 3 weeks, unplugged every single appliance, and still got a $200 power bill. I mean, come on, that tells you right there, this isn't about how much TV you're watching. Kevin was pretty sure the problem had to be with the building's own equipment.
And boom, there it is, the smoking gun. After he kept pushing and pushing, technicians finally came and confirmed it. One of his own AC units, even when it was supposed to be off, was pulling a massive 9 amps of power. Why? Because the heating element was stuck in the on position. So not only was it a huge energy drain, it was literally a fire risk. So he's got this evidence about the faulty AC. But as he kept digging, he found something else. Something that really changed the whole game and made this situation feel a lot more serious.
It's this, who actually owned what? He found out that his landlord, the Eugene, and the company that was billing him for power, Metergy, they weren't 2 separate businesses. Nope, they're both owned by the exact same parent company, Brookfield. And to Kevin, that looked like a pretty major conflict of interest.
Okay, so now Kevin is armed with everything. He's got the technician's report on the faulty AC, he's got stories from other tenants, and now he knows about this potential conflict of interest. He puts it all together in a super detailed email to the building's management, probably thinking, okay, now they'll have to fix this.
He lays it all out. The 9 amps of power draw, the stories from other people, the fact that Brookfield owns both companies. And he says flat out, I can't sign a new lease until I know what my power bills are actually going to be. The response he got back? Yeah, it was short. And it pretty much ignored everything he just spent weeks proving.
Instead of even talking about the evidence, management just calls the power bill issue entirely separate from his lease. Then they pivot. They immediately change the subject to the rent he hadn't paid while this was all being disputed, and they drop a pretty clear threat. Pay up or we'll take legal action.
And just look at how fast this all went down. We go from a lease renewal offer in February to a 24-hour ultimatum on April 9th. Within weeks, what started as a dispute over a power bill had spiraled. By April 16th, Kevin was officially in holdover status, which is basically the first legal step toward getting kicked out. So now he's facing legal action, and the landlord just won't engage with the actual problem. What do you do? Well, Kevin decided this wasn't just about his apartment anymore.
he decided to go public, and this is what he did. He launched Fight the Good Fight NYC. It's basically a tenant advocacy group meant to shine a light on these kinds of practices and help other renters who might be in the same boat. And right after he started this group, Kevin claims the landlord retaliated. He says they cut off his access to all the building's common areas, the gym, the lounge, stuff that was part of his rent. In his own words, this is retaliation. Look, Kevin's whole experience really brings home a super important point for anyone who rents. The most powerful thing you have is knowing your rights. So let's actually take a second and look at some of the legal protections that apply here. New York State has actually put some pretty big new protections in place for renters recently, and understanding them is so important, whether you're in a fight with your landlord or you're just about to sign a lease. First off, let's talk about that term, holdover eviction. That's what Kevin was up against. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. It's not an eviction for not paying rent. It's when a landlord tries to get you to leave for any other reason. Maybe they say you broke a rule or your lease is up, and they just don't want you there anymore.
Then there's the concept of tenant harassment. And this is a big one. It's actually illegal for a landlord to try and force you out by making your life miserable. We're talking about things like deliberately not making repairs, cutting off essential services, like, for example, your electricity, or using threats to intimidate you. And there are other really key protections for renters in New York City. Things like landlords have to give you a lot of written notice, 30, 60, or even 90 days before they raise your rent or decide not to renew your lease. Late fees are capped. Security deposits are capped. And get this, a landlord can't legally refuse to rent to you just because you had a legal fight with a previous landlord. Which brings us right back to the beginning, and to Kevin. His whole story is basically a real-life example of what the New York court system itself tells people to do. Get your papers together. Gather everything you have. Your strongest weapon is proof. So, in the end, this whole saga, it really shines a spotlight on this core tension in housing, doesn't it? And it leaves you with a really big question to think about. When a tenant and a landlord go head-to-head, who actually has the power? Is it the one with all the money, or is it the one with all the proof?